Okay, in this video module, what we're going to do is take a look at how we can set up basic doors in our level. Through this VTM series so far, we've looked at all sorts of things, but we just don't have a way of separating two rooms yet with a door. Now, doors can get really complicated. You can have some very complex setups. And we will show you something that's somewhat interesting by the end of this lesson that's going to use multiple doors, and it's going to use a trigger relay and a GUI. It's still relatively basic. Just keep in mind that the idea of this video right here is just an introduction to how you get doors into place. So we're going to start out taking a look at how we can put a door frame model in, and then how we can put a Func door in place, rotate it, get it aligned right, and make it respond to a player. So the Func door entity is going to be what we're going to use as the door, of course. We will set it to a model, though it could be used as a brush, and we'll mention that again when we get to it. Then once we get a door in place and responding to us, the player, then we're going to kind of move into door characteristics. We're going to take a look at how we can control which direction the door opens, be it up, down, left, or right, how fast or slow it opens, and closes as well. How long it's going to stay open for. I mean, you may want the door to open and stay open for 10 seconds for whatever reason. We're also going to look at how close the player needs to be to the door before it actually responds. From there, we'll move into triggers. We're going to take a look at triggers. We'll use a GUI as well, just to have something that we can visually interact with inside our level. But we'll take a look at how we can have the trigger cause the door to open. Then we're going to see how we can make it so that the door is a toggle. So we hit the GUI button and the door opens, and then we have to hit the GUI again for the door to close. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll take a look at making a more complex setup, like I said a second ago, where we've got two doors, and we basically hit a button, and the first door opens, and then there's a delay. Then the second door opens, and then there's a delay. Then the first door closes, and there's a delay. And then finally the second door closes. So it's not really difficult to set up. It's just some neat stuff, and the more that we show, the more you guys out there are familiar with how to set things like this up in Doom 3. So with that, Logan, let's go and get started.
Okay, well the first thing I'm going to do is add that door frame model. So I'll simply right click, grab a new model, and give it a second to load the model list.
Let it load, okay.
So from here we're going to go to Map Objects, then to Doors, and from Doors we're going to grab the MCity door frame, and hit OK. So here we have our door frame. I'm going to move it down to the floor, and I need to rotate it 90 degrees. So I'll simply use the brush rotate 90 degree from in the Z-axis, which has the model rotated in the correct direction. And you'll notice that I can't quite line it up with the door openings at this grid setting, so I'll lower the grid down to 4, which will allow me to line it up just in the opening of that hallway.
Nice.
So with that now, I'll add the Func door itself. So I'll right-click in front of the door frame, go down to Func, and find Func door. And a Func door can display as either a brush or a model.
And of course, by default, it comes in as a brush.
But in this case, we're going to use a specific model for the door. So I'm going to hit Model, and I'm going to grab MCity door, and hit OK. So there we have the door. I can align it to the floor just like the door frame, and you'll notice it's rotated 90 degrees away from the hallway just like the frame itself was, so we're going to need to rotate it over. Except in this case, you'll notice that it kind of looks a little bit backwards. I wanted that little handle part to be on the left, so that we have a door that opens from left to right. So I'll reselect it and rotate it 90 degrees 2 more times, so we have a total of 270 degrees of rotation.
Caused by 3 90-degree rotations.
So with the door oriented properly, I'll now move it into place inside the door frame, and there we go.
Now at this point we have a functioning door, though if we were to jump into the level and we were a complete newbie to the world of Doom 3, I think we'd get a bit of a shock, because it's not going to look exactly like what we see right now inside the editor. As a matter of fact, Logan, let's go ahead and let's save this off and do it.
Let me run VSP on this map real quick, ensure that that's been built, and then load it up.
Okay, let's see. Yep, definitely a problem. Yep, definitely. Now, it does function, though. Watch this. Run into it. Hey, it opened. I don't know how useful that is. And there it goes.
Just the wrong way.
Right.
The thing we need to worry about now is the fact that you have to set the direction in which a door opens, which, if we look in the properties, is set by move DIR.
Of course, it does have a default, which is just 90 degrees off. It's the way it came in.
The way it came in. And in the end, we've rotated this door a total of 270 degrees, so we basically need to update the move DIR so that it moves the same way it would expect from the way we have it visually oriented. So I'll set the move DIR to 270, save the map, and reload. And there, now it looks correct, and if we run up to it, it moves correctly too. So now we have a basic door not only in place and functioning, but oriented the correct way.
So now let's get into some of the characteristics. Right now, there's a predefined radius on how close you need to be to the door before it's going to respond. And we can control that. I mean, we can get it away from just a bump to some really large radius. And we can control this with trigger size. So let's go ahead and throw a trigger size of, I don't know, maybe 400. That's huge. Something very noticeable. Come in the game, it just opens. Almost. All right, let's walk towards it. And yeah, there you go. We were
so
pretty
all
close.
the way back here will affect the door now. So if you have some kind of massive blast door where the trigger size extends out too far, you can always lower it with this property. Or if the door is supposed to open as you're running towards it at 1,000,000 miles an hour on some kind of platform or something, have it respond more quickly.
So let's go ahead and delete that out now that we've shown it, just so that it's going to respond kind of like default.
Because for our purposes, its default worked just fine.
Yeah. All right, so now let's take a look at, I don't know, how about the speed in which it opens?
We actually have two properties that can be used to set the speed and time. I kind of like using time just because time is set in seconds. So it's really easy to get an idea of how fast it's actually going to work. So let's set it to about 0.25, so it only takes a quarter of a second.
Have one of those fast Star Trek type-like doors, just open, close.
So now we have the door.
And up to it, and
open.
Nice fast open. Now, long delay. What if we wanted the time in which it stays open, instead of being as long as it is now, something like maybe a second?
Well, we can set the, basically what's happening is the door by default doesn't close until the player is out of its way. If you stand in a doorway, the door won't close on you. But after you move out of the way, there's a time that passes between when you're out of the way and when it actually closes. And we can set this time by using wait. How long it waits until it actually closes. We can lower this down to 1 so that it closes more quickly after the player goes through it or walks away from it. So, open, stays open, still open, walk away, and then much more quickly the door closes. Alright, so got wait. What do we want to take a look at?
Okay, so we've looked at how fast it opens, how long it stays open, and of course the quick closing. So let's see. How about let's just go and get into some triggers now.
Okay, that sounds good. So now we get into a more complex scenario where instead of the door reacting to the player, it actually reacts to a trigger setup.
Now we could of course just drag out a brush, change it over into a trigger multiple or something like that, but let's use a GUI.
Okay, just because that makes it a little bit easier for demonstration purposes since we have something we can see to use as the trigger. So I'll first bring in a model that we can apply the GUI to. So I'll go to COM and grab a GUI stand. And then I'll rotate it I'll angle to about 270. And then I'll move it so it's roughly on the floor. Doesn't have to be exact in this case. So we have the GUI the func static with the model positioned.
Now let's go ahead and get a GUI assigned.
Now the GUI we want to use should be located under door or doors. And from there, let's grab maybe just the exit GUI.
This is the exit. That'll work.
So now, how do we set it up? This is basically the same as we'd set up anything else. We need to target the door in order to trigger it. So with the func static of the model selected, I'll shift select the door and hit Control K.
Now let's go ahead and go into game real quick. Let's save that out. Go into game and take a look at something. If we kind of sneak around over to the side and walk up to the control panel, and there we go, and hit it. Okay, it's going to trigger. So the doors are set up to be triggered by default, but now don't hit that. Just actually run into the door. So you see that it still is going to basically open up when the player runs into it, and that really, brings up the question of how useful is the GUI at the moment. So we need to go ahead and set the door up so it's not going to respond to a player bumping into it.
And we can do that by setting the no touch property. If we scroll down a little, you see we have no touch. With that set to 1, this means that the door basically ignores the player and is only waiting to be triggered. So if we run up to the door, nope, can't get through. But we can of course still trigger it. And then it closes. Though at the moment, it's kind of tricky to run through it because it closes so quickly.
Right.
So we might actually want to look at setting another property, which would be toggle. basically we can set up the door instead of having a delay until it closes. We can make it simply stay open indefinitely until it's triggered again. So if we scroll down, we have toggle. If we set toggle to 1 and save it out, we still have the time, which controls how fast it opens and closes, but there is no wait or stay open time because it's set to toggle. So if we open it now, we can just sit here and wait forever. It'll stay open.
Matter of fact, we could just go ahead and duplicate the little console there and drag it to the other side and have that toggle it back off, so when we get to the other side we can shut it.
Yep. You want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
So I can grab this guy, clone him over to the other side, and set its rotation maybe back to 90, or even better. Angle can be completely deleted so that it faces the right way. Okay, hang on, I'll play with this for just 1 second, maybe 90? There we go. Should have just used the rotate tool. Anyway, we have this guy set up, and of course we need to target him at the door. And, well,
that's the beautiful thing about it. It's done. It's that easy.
So now we have full control of the door, and that we can open it, we can run through it, and once we're done with the door, we can close it.
Very cool.
Or open it.
Now let's take a look at this. Actually, though, after you quit out, go ahead and move that control panel on the right-hand side over a little bit, just so it's not in the way of the hallway. I'm being picky, too. Okay, now, how can we clone doors? Cloning doors is really, really simple. So let's clone that door and the door frame and have it close off the other side of the hallway.
Okay. Though there is just one property I want to set on this first. Basically, for a setup that we'll use later, I'm going to kill toggle off of it.
Okay.
But we have the door and the door frame selected, spacebar, clone, and move to the other side. And, oh, it's pretty much set up. It holds all its properties, and it always runs from wherever it's currently at, so its current offset's still correct.
There you go.
And everything, so I mean, it's basically working just in another position.
Okay. Now, what do you say? Get into something a little more interesting now?
One more property. Then we'll get into something more interesting. Let's take this door, instead of opening to the side, let's change it so that it opens upwards.
Oh, that's a good idea. Controlling the direction.
You'll notice move dir has been working basically like an angle. And in that we set it to 270 and it moved in the correct direction. Well, it inherits just about everything about angle, and that you can use up and down, which are use the values -1 and -2. So if we set it to -1, we have a door that moves up instead of to the side. So, okay, that's all I wanted to do. We can get back on track now.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and tie that in. Let's have that first trigger. Go ahead and set the first trigger up to control that one opening as well. And the second. So in other words, we're going to tie in the first GUI into that new door.
Okay.
So hit both of them, and then we can close it with that one. They'll be able to see the up and down.
Okay. So now we have both doors controlled by both GUIs.
Now, is that GUI controlling? I don't see a connection line from the first GUI. Yeah.
Oh, so they've both open immediately.
They're both going to open at the same time. Then they'll be able. There we go.
Okay, so we have 4 connections total. So where we have this guy targeted at 2 doors, the other GUI targeted at 2 doors as well.
Now let's jump in there and take a peek at this. Cool.
So open.
All right. So now we'll. You turned the toggle off.
But I mean, we can see that it's working. So
yeah. So one's going up and down in the back. Okay, so all right, let's go ahead and move into a little bit more complicated of setup. I think everybody will be able to follow with no problem if we go in there and adjust the toggle. All right, so let's say at this point we want to go ahead and make it so that with the that GUI right there, when we press that button, what it's going to do is it's going to open up the first door. I want it to delay opening up the second door for us, though, and delay it by about, I don't know, a couple of seconds. And then after the first door was open for a couple of seconds, I want it to close, and then a couple of seconds later, I want the second door to close. So we kind of start this offset chain reaction. Does that make sense?
Yep. So basically, the first door is almost set up the way we need it to. It'll probably just lower its speed. So on the first door, the only thing we should need to set up really is the time. We'll up that to 1. Now, one other thing I will set here is the wait. We'll make these doors stay open longer. Matter of fact, we'll make them stay open for 4 seconds, just so it's easier to see the
whole
result.
effect. Yeah.
So we have that guy set up, and of course, directly triggering him is fine because we want him to open immediately.
Cool. Now, for the second door, we don't want that one to open up immediately. We need to somehow tell it to trigger, but we need to do it with kind of a delay. And this is where we can get into a new trigger type. This is where we can get into a trigger relay. which basically acts kind of like a pass-through, if you will. So we can have our GUI trigger the relay, and then the relay can basically delay X amount of time before then sending out a trigger of its own and have it trigger that second door.
Okay, so let's bring one of those trigger relays into the level. I'll scroll on down to triggers, or trigger, and then grab a trigger relay. Now, this panel is no longer going to target the other door directly, so I'm going to take its target 1 and delete it, and instead target it at the relay. So we have the control panel hitting the relay. Then on the relay itself, we can set a delay of 2 seconds. Then the relay gets targeted at the other door. So let me move over where I can see the other door. Shift select it, Control K. So now we have control panel to relay, then to door.
Right, and because of the amount of time the doors are being set to wait open, the whole thing should pretty much be ready to go.
Except for this one door, I want to do some of the same settings. I want to set it so that...
Oh, that's right, you haven't set that one yet.
So yeah, this time it'll stay, let's see, set the time to 4 seconds.
Okay.
The wait...
The time to 4 seconds?
No, the time to 1 second.
1 second, yeah.
So we have time as in how fast it moves, 1 second, stay open for 4 seconds.
Right.
Alright, so time to test. Open, wait, open, and this one's still set up too fast. Must either not have saved the map or, let's see, we have time and wait, so yeah. Sometimes when you're working in the Entity tab, you don't get the little asterisk by the map indicating that you need to save. So sometimes it can be a little confusing like that. So open, wait, open, wait, and then close. That's odd that its speed is still...
Yeah, that is pretty strange.
Move it around, just see if it wasn't catching.
Matter of fact, I have a feeling it's still going through the same... Yeah, still same speed. So, yeah, take a peek real quick. Go back over to the entities now that you've moved that.
This,
to the inspector. Yeah, there you go. Now reset it.
Maybe I just had something.
It still looks like it may have, for some reason, been looking at the other door.
So move over 1 second, wait for 4.
There we go. Now let's give that a shot. That should work. And first guy. First guy, but for some reason it just refuses to accept that setting.
Let's see.
That's kind of odd. Let's go and kill out that second control panel altogether.
And then second door is set to...
Yeah, he's still got the settings.
So we set
Do this. Go ahead and delete time out and then just put time back in it if it's not wanting to keep it.
So kill and then re-add.
No, not 2.25.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We want to go ahead and set it to 1. Okay, now do this. Go ahead and select the other door. And then, there we go. And now reselect the first door. Let's just make sure that everything stayed. Okay, now save that and give that a shot. It's just acting a little bit funny on us. Not a problem, not a problem. So first one, second one, much better. And first one, and finally last one. Very nice. Okay, so with that really is going to wrap up everything we wanted to show you. We've taken a look at using the Func door, and we've taken a look at quite a few of the properties on it, how we can have it controlled by a player bumping into it or via trigger. And then we set a little bit more of a complicated setup up, and that's really it. So with that, that's going to wrap up this lesson on basic doors.